You've got a patient's life in front of you. There's just nothing quite like being there doing surgery. And a lot of times the operating room has been compared to flying a plane.
We have a responsibility to ourselves, our families. We have a responsibility to the passengers that we carry. So everything we do has safety at its core.
Making a mistake is not an option, obviously, in our line of work. If we were to make a series of mistakes, the consequences of a radiological release or of having significant damage here on site could affect the state of California and the U.S. as a whole, or even in the world.
The ultimate responsibility of the quality of care falls on the surgeon. That's what happens here in the operating room. So we need to be sure that everything's right.
Aviation has gone through a lot of changes and developments, and among those developments to enhance safety has been checklists.
We have one shot when there's a problem to get things correct. We want to make sure that we have a checklist in our hand that provides us the guidance we need to ensure we're performing.
And so checklists have come along to make sure that each step along the way we're not missing anything, that all the things that need to happen to make a patient well and to get a patient to recover all happen in an orderly and proper fashion.
Given the complexity of the equipment that we operate, the speeds at which we operate, it's essential that we use checklists to make sure that we accomplish all of the tasks that are necessary to safety. The potential for a mistake creating a hazardous situation is too great, so checklists are utilized to minimize that potential.
It doesn't matter how complex, how simple the job, we've got a checklist in hand every time we do any operation out here.
When you check in, we got to make sure we have your right name and your right birth date and the right medications you're on.
So the checklists are even set up so that if we do something wrong, we'll have an opportunity to catch it.
When you get into the operating room, then they're getting really down to the specifics, where specific equipment, specific medications, is the patient in the right position?
We do a briefing with respect to the flight we're about to conduct and begin our checklist, which makes sure that all of the items that we did as a part of the setup process were accomplished, and then we're on our way.
Checklists in the operating room took a little time to get used to. Surgeons are used to being in control. It's now just integrated into everything that we do.
It allows people to call attention to a mistake without feeling that it's just their opinion. It's in black and white, it's written down.
It's just a couple seconds. It takes no time at all.
It is important to us to make sure that we keep the lights on. And if we're not doing what we're supposed to do, then we lose some of that public trust.
This is the 21st century. This is how we're going to do safe, high-quality surgery. And we really believe these checklists allow us to maintain that.
1962, Red Adair, Boots Hansen, and Coots Matthews were facing down a monster of a gas well fire in Algeria called the Devil's Cigarette Lighter.
That was a tremendous fire, one that went on for several months, and it was so large and so ferocious that really most people didn't think that it could ever be controlled.
This roaring giant shot flames and smoke 800 feet into the air as 550 million cubic feet of gas spewed out each day in the scorching desert heat. The pressure was so great, men had to be careful not to be sucked up into the flames.
And it was the biggest one, and she would flare out and try to pick you off the ground, so much volume coming out.
The fire would be a showcase for the techniques and tools Myron invented and Red perfected. Without access to water, the men had to drill for it. To hold the water, they dug 3 pits, each about the size of a football field, and 10 feet deep. Red's team cooled the site with high-pressure water cannons and protected the equipment with corrugated tin. Red's men used an Athey wagon and bulldozers to pull away the debris of the burned-up rig. After several months of preparation, they were finally ready to shoot out the fire with nitroglycerin charges.
We shot out 750 pounds of 100% glycerin.
Now that the well was no longer burning, the men attempted to cap it. Red employed a sand line cutter, a tool he had been using for several years. The sand line cutter was a sand resin-coated cable looped around the wellhead. Winches on opposite sides pulled the cable back and forth, cutting the wellhead off like a bandsaw. The men then forced a blowout preventer over the blowing well and secured it to the pipe. A delicate operation when even static electricity could reignite the well and kill everyone around. Finally, after 6 months, the Devil's Cigarette Lighter stopped roaring. The amazing feat captured the world's attention and propelled Red Adair to international celebrity.
I'd like to officially introduce you to the 8-step practical problem-solving process. Now, I'd also like to point out that these 8 steps are based closely on what Toyota calls the Toyota business practice, which is essentially a detailed explanation of how the PDCA cycle works. All right, so let's get started. Now, the first step in the process has us clarifying the problem. In other words, we must clearly describe the current situation while going to see with our own eyes in order to get the facts. Now, we also want to answer questions such as whether we've contained the problem in order to protect the customer, even if this means implementing a temporary solution. And the second step of the process has us breaking the big vague problem down into smaller, more specific problems. Again, we want to go see the actual problem process or situation with our own eyes. Now, during this step, we'll also take time to study the various inputs and outputs of the process, helping us to properly scope and prioritize our efforts. Next, once we've scoped the problem, it's time to set a target that we will achieve, which is step 3. Now, this is an important step as it forces us to make a commitment. Now, this target should definitely be a challenge, but also something that helps limit the scope In other words, it becomes a must-do target. Finally, it's important to remember that this target should take us one step towards the ideal, meaning it doesn't have to be a gargantuan leap towards perfection. Instead, we'll focus on taking one solid step at a time. Next, step 4 has us analyzing the root cause. Once again, to do this, we must practice Genshi Genbutsu without prejudice, which means we must go and see the problems for ourselves instead of relying on what a report says. Now, during this step, we'll work to find points of cause, which is the starting point of root cause analysis. Now, as it turns out, there are often multiple points of cause, so we must drill down using things like the 5 why. And for the record, 5 is not a magic number. It's just a typical number suggested to get to the root cause. Now then, a proper root cause analysis will point to the action needed, namely the removal of the root cause. To do this, you and your team will need to make a plan that includes who, what, and when, enabling you to pursue multiple countermeasures, which is step 5 of the practical problem-solving process. Now, step 6 has us seeing the countermeasures through as we implement our countermeasures quickly as a team. To accomplish this, it's important to seek the help and, most importantly, the ideas of many people. You'll also want to communicate the status regularly while turning the PDCA cycle again and again. And perhaps the best advice we can offer with this step is to never give up. You'll no doubt hit obstacles and challenges, but your willingness to persevere and battle through these situations may very well mean the difference between success and failure. Now, step 7 is often called the follow-up phase, as we evaluate both the results and the process. Now, during this step, you'll want to ask the questions, was this an effective countermeasure or just luck? Since, if you look closely at this picture of the famous square peg in a round hole example, sometimes even great ideas, such as ensuring only round pegs get inserted, have room for improvement, since a person with a square peg and a hammer just might find ways around this error-proof device. Finally, step 8 of the practical problem-solving method challenges us to standardize success using something the Japanese call yokoten, which, loosely translated, means to copy and expand good Kaizen ideas to other areas while also identifying unresolved issues. And in addition to building on successes, we must also face and learn from unresolved issues. In fact, we should never shy away from these challenges, as failure to address them could lead to problems reappearing in the near future. And finally, during this 8th and final step, we must set the next targets for improvement, since the phrase, "no problem is a problem," is so very true. And that covers the overview of the 8 steps of practical problem solving. Obviously, we've only offered a brief overview of these 8 steps in this overview module.